How about you? How you been?
Oh, I've been good. I've been just, I'm living in my truth.
Cool. Then let's do an episode then.
And welcome back, everybody, to the best music podcast on this side of the Mississippi. Actually, I forgot about the trope that I was doing there for a hot minute. On all sides of the Mississippi, not just this side of the Mississippi. And for those of you who are super fans of our show, you probably know what side of the Mississippi we are broadcasting from, but I digress. This podcast is called Hey Listen to This, and it is hosted by two dashingly good-looking men who share the same middle name. I am the one. I am the only. I am the one who is just surprisingly bringing like a ton of fire right now, Ryan James Kearns.
And I am the one, the only, the slightly less on fire, more trying to stay warm, Matthew James Durzik. And for those who don't know what this Hey Listen to This podcast is, well, listen to this. What me and Ryan do on a weekly basis is try to encourage each other to listen to different albums. We pick an album, we review it track by track, we pick out what we like, what we don't like, what we think are highlights, what could be improved. And last week, we went into my wheelhouse a little bit with the 1992 release by Wynonna Judd, simply titled Wynonna. And with 90s country, I wasn't sure how things were going to go, and we both tended to like it a decent bit, Ryan.
Yeah, I walked away from that Wynonna record feeling a deeper appreciation for what she had to bring to the table as an artist. Personally, before, like I said in the review, I mean, if you want to hear the full context of my opinions about the album, please go check out that episode. But before I did the review, before I listened to the album, I only kind of knew of one song apparently by her, but it was nice hearing, what she had to bring to the table. Not every song was a hit for me, but, overall, it was a good experience.
It was a good experience, and now, switching over to something completely different, as Monty Python would say, we are going from 90s country to something a lot more recent. So recent that it brings us back to the year of 2024. Ryan, what is it that we are doing this week?
So, this week, we are going to be reviewing the posthumously released album by the artist known as Sophie, who was an English music producer, songwriter, and DJ. The main reason why I put this up for contention for us to review and dissect is that in Charlie XCX's Brat, in the song So I, it's basically about her relationship with Sophie. So along with that, and the fact that Rough Trade named this their top album of 2024, I was very interested to see what it had to bring to the table. And even looking back on my previous exposure to Sophie, the only other album I knew of her before doing this review, and even before doing the Brat review, was her 2017 release, Oil of Every Pearl's Insides. And I remember, liking that album for the most part. I know, every song wasn't specifically for me, and, there were some weird moments, but overall it was a good experience. So I decided to put this up for contention. And also, yeah, a little bit of a background about Sophie before we, kick off the review here. So Sophie, like I alluded to, was an English music producer, songwriter, and DJ. She was known for having a brash take on pop music and its incorporation on underground dance styles. She was really big into hyper pop, especially in the 2010 scene, like, really pioneering that genre. So you're going to hear a lot of hyperpop in this album here, and I'm curious to hear what your reactions to on within that genre are. And Sophie got her big break whenever she teamed up with Charlie XCX. She helped produce several songs on Charlie's projects between 2015 and 2017. Most notably, in 2016, Charlie's Vroom Vroom EP. Sophie produced a couple songs off of that EP, and then in 2017, Charlie released 2 mixtapes. Side note, I don't know what the difference between a mixtape and an album is. I think it's just the wording. But anyways, the 2 mixtapes were Number One Angel and Pop 2. And so I alluded to the fact that, Sophie, this album here was posthumously released. Well, unfortunately, on January 30th, 2021, at the age of 34, Sophie accidentally fell 3 floors from the rooftop of a building in Athens, Greece, while attempting to take a picture of the full moon. She died around like 4 in the morning. So, yeah, like, out of all the ways to die, like, that's a very interesting way to, like, go. And it also puts, like, I don't know, like, even heavier weight to that Charlie XCX song, So I, because I remember that song sounding very much like it's coming from a rooftop. So, like, and there was also, like, talks about, like, rooftops within, like, a couple of the moments within the album. So, yeah, it's just an interesting note that just came off of the top of my head. And in regards to this album here, the material as a whole was largely unfinished, but at the time of Sophie's passing in 2021. So her brother, Benny Long, saw this album and decided to put the finishing touches on it. So what we're going to hear is not entirely 100% a Sophie produced album. It's almost just like, I don't know, I hate to compare the two, but like you think about, for those nerds out there who have read J.R.R. Tolkien, that a couple of the books that have been released recently, or like, since J.R.R. Tolkien's passing, like, most of it was like finished by Tolkien's, son. So, like, this is like, somebody starting the work and finishing it. So, yeah, that's a really brief synopsis about Sophie and what she was known for and how she broke out and, like, what has led to this album here today. And like I said, my only exposure to her is the reference in Charlie XCX's Rat and that 2017 album that I listened to, Oil of Every Pearl's Insides.
Which is more of an experience with Sophie than I have, because literally all I knew about her leading into this album was the aforementioned drop on Brat. Everything else I have learned since listening to this album and doing the research on it. But at the same time, it is interesting that this album were to come out the same year that Sophie got, let's be honest, a bit of a international shout out by Charlie on Brat, which became, as we both experienced, the sort of summer song or summer album that really pushed sort of pop music back into the fold. But I am ready to talk about this album. Are you?
Yeah, man, I am ready, and I'm going to kick it off by, it's going to be interesting hearing us talk about this album here specifically. I'm curious to hear how you're going to approach it, because a lot of what we talk about within our music dissections, we talk about, like, lyrics and little instrumental moments that, like, add a nice little texture, like, different things. This album here is a mixture of EDM, hyperpop, and just straight up pop in moments. So with a 16-track album, I thought it was going to be very daunting for us to review. But as I was getting into it, I'm like, Actually, I don't really have all that much to say about it. And that's not a bad thing because, like, a lot of these songs are basically pure vibes. And are the vibes there? Are they not? Are the vibes offending me? Or are they basically saying, hey, you got this, Ryan? We're about to find out. So, kicking off the review with, the intro, the full horror. So there's not really much here to talk about literally compared to like a lot of the rest of the album. This is essentially just an ambient drone track with that basically almost like, for lack of a better term, it almost seems like it's like kind of like bubbling, and like I called like that kind of effect like a warby, like like very like thick and everything like that. And it like you hear like some faint vocals, but other than that, that's basically it. And a little bit about the track here. The instrumental was taken from Sophie's remix of Come by Brooke Candy. Yes, C-U-M, not the other way to, say come. Anyways, there goes our demonetization. Otherwise, like, in terms of setting up the mood for the album and just getting the listener to focus in and listen in, this track does a decent job.
I agree. It is about as atmospheric an opener as you can get, and how you enjoy this track may very well depend on how you're listening to the album as a whole, and I mean this technologically. The first time I heard this, I was wearing the earbuds that I have in right now, and it felt like I was in the planetarium at the Carnegie Science Center. Like, I'm about to watch some grandiose stuff on nature here. And I mean that as a compliment, for the record. Like, this felt like I was just about to, like, I was in a dark room looking up at, like, the stars and being like, ooh, I'm going to learn about nature today. But aside from that, I really don't have anything else to add that you did. I think it's a very well engineered and produced track for what it is. It sounds great on the earbuds, but if you're just sort of casually listening to it, like through your phone or through your computer, it may not have the same effect. But that's pretty much all I have to say about it.
So, are you ready to go on to Raw?
Yes, I'm ready to go on to Raw. With 6 W's, by the way. This is the first track with any type of lyrics on it, and it is the first of the rest of the tracks which have features on them, particularly by singer/rapper Jazzy. And I'm just going to come out and say it. This is my least favorite track on the album because it just sounds like dance pop and hip hop as a whole going in the wrong direction. Now, the good part about this track is Sophie. I will say that. Her beat is good, and the way that she chooses to execute, I believe what Anthony Fantano called the 808s, the little boom, boom, boom. Like, those were very curiously deployed, and I kind of like them because they almost had sort of a weird jazzy melody to them, like they were trying to convey some sort of like confusion towards them. But everything else, the vocals and the lyrics are not good. I'm just kind of tired as a whole of songs that talk about this sort of like, yeah, look at me, this is what I'm doing, and I'm the best for doing it type of thing. I thought we left this back in like 2013 with like Started from the Bottom. Obviously we haven't as a whole, but as a mainstream thing, I just thought we sort of left that in the past. And Jazzy, God bless her, she's, trying to add a little spunk to this track, but it just rubbed me the wrong way, and I really don't have anything else to say other than this track sucks.
Dude, I'm right there with you. Like, literally everything that you just said, I was just like, it's funny. I wish I could share my screen with you because my first note is least favorite. Second note is I'm sorry, Matt. So yeah, the production is fantastic. Like, I love the 808 bass line that you described. It really does set the mood for the track pretty well. And even at like its core with how this track functions, like, if you remove the auto tune, or if you make Jazzy's performance not so like haphazard, and if you make it a little bit more focused, I could imagine if, like, somebody that, I don't know, like, I'm not, well, I'm just gonna, this is the only reference I can come up with, like somebody like T-Pain, if he would do a track like this, he could do auto-tune, but he can make it work. This doesn't work because it it's trying to reflect the attitude of, hey, look, I don't care. This is what I do. Like, I just do it every time. I want to do drugs and do this and do that. And, like, you can, if you can pull that off in an efficient manner without it just coming across haphazard and sloppy and auto-tune that is basically just overproduced and that offends my ears, like, maybe, like, I could dig this track, but overall, dude, like, yeah, this track sucks, man. It is my least favorite track by a country mile. And yeah, like, we go from Intro to Full Horror, which was just like this experience where it's just like, oh, something's about to happen, and then, like, Raw comes in all Leroy Jenkins on us and basically saying, nope, nope, hey, you were expecting this, but look at this. I have a turkey.
Yeah, I think this might be the first time in the history of the show that we have actually agreed on what the worst track is. Several times we've agreed on what the best track is on an album, but I don't think we've ever agreed on what the worst is. This has to be the first, because I cannot think of a time we were just both like, no, absolutely not. Unless you could think of one off the top of your head.
The only thing I could think of, but I mean, I don't think you thought it was the worst track. When we did the Yeezus review, the song that has basically escaped my memory at this point, like, I knew that was my least favorite track. I don't think you labeled that as your least favorite track, if I'm not mistaken.
If you're referring to I'm In It, that was not my least favorite off of Yeezus. The penultimate track off that album, which, again, the name of it I cannot remember, the one before, Bound 2, was my least favorite because it was so indiscriminately forgettable. It was just an absolute nothing burger of a song. But yeah, no, this is the first. This is the first we have disagreed on, or excuse me, agreed on the most not good song. And for the record, I want to say a top 3 and a bottom 2.
I have a top 3 and a bottom 3 within this album.
Okay. So, are you ready to move on to Plunging Asymptote?
Yeah, man. And I'm going to have you, kick this one off here.
Okay. So we move from Raw to this song called Plunging Asymptote, featuring Juliana Huxtable. And this isn't so much a step forward as a pivot to the left on this album, because we go from a dance track that is significantly annoying to another dance track that is more importantly annoying. I don't know. Because realistically, this track is just a set of lyrics in which Juliana Huxtable talks about a plunging asymptote, followed by what that is or what it's going to do, and that's it for about 3 minutes. Now, it almost feels like it in the next track kind of remind me a little bit of vibes from the end of Muse's The Second Law, where it was a lot of explanations about things that are happening in our universe that we may need to be aware of. This is considerably dumber than that. However, I will say that, once again, the bright spot on this track is Sophie. Because the beat's good, and the sort of water phone style effects, where the diddling, diddling, like, something that you would hear like a horror movie soundtrack. I thought that was a pretty nice touch. But aside from that, this is my other least favorite track. This is my second least favorite, saved only by the previous track, which I thought was even worse.
Oh wow! So like right out of the gate, man, like you're 3 tracks in, and you're like, I'm not having a good time here. I'm sorry for that.
It's okay.
Anyways, I'm a little bit higher on this track than you are. It didn't land in my bottom 3. I didn't like. For me, I'm when I turn to music, I'm very much a lyric head, but I turned on my vibes brain with this track here, Plunging Asymptote, and for the most part, the vibes land with me. The vocals aren't bad, like, they are just mainly they're there just to set the vibe, but the production was really good, like you mentioned. Just the one thing that I will say that kind of took away from the track a little bit for me is just at moments where like you have the 2 parts dueling out and they're just grinding up against each other, just being slightly off time. I understand what they were going for, but the payoff wasn't notable enough for the grind to be worth it. That's a message for life right there. However, for me, this did pick up the vibes, and like I think I just said vibes like 16 times already, and I hate to say, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to be saying that word a lot more for the rest of the review here. However, like, I didn't mind this track, but it didn't land in my top 3, or like it wasn't another one of my least favorite tracks.
I do appreciate you bringing up that sort of grinding thing, though, because if it were just staying on beat and as repetitive as it was, I could probably give it a pass. But you're right, that grinding does not help the track at all, especially again for how repetitive it is. I wasn't a fan of this song either, and like you said, we're 3 songs in already. My bottom 2 have been revealed.
So I'm gonna take the lead on the next track here, and the next track is the Dome's Protection. Yeah, we get another hard pivot, man. So, like, sequencing. I'm imagining that Benny Long, Sophie's brother, probably had a hand in the sequencing here, and he just basically took a look at everything and just said, hey, F your sequencing. I'm just going to put what I feel like is a good, song here or there, like a way to come out of songs. That being said, we're gonna start to get into moments like in the album that I really do love, because yes, the majority of this album is EDM and hyperpop, but dude, the feeling that I got from this track here, it's another ambient drone track, so you got that in intro the full horror, so it's not a genre or style that we haven't heard Sophie do, but this is a fully fleshed out song. And yeah, just the peaceful, ethereal feeling that I got from it, especially with the instrumentation alongside the spoken word part, it was just simply sublime in my humble opinion. And yeah, the spoken word part has words and passages about what I feel like went through Christopher Nolan's mind when he was writing Interstellar. Ladies and gentlemen, whenever you hear that, feel free to pause the pod, go take a look at the lyrics, or if you're familiar with them, cool, you know what I mean. And yeah, another moment that I want to highlight here is I just love the section where the spoken word part says stop, and it's not a complete and utter stop, but it's a gradual stop, and then the track just picks up like a second later, and that was an excellent touch. And yeah, I don't have much else to say about the Dome's Protection other than the fact that it is my favorite track on the album, my dude.
Whoa, I was not expecting that at all.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I dug this track too. It's not in my top three, but I completely understand why. It definitely goes back to that atmospheric vibes, like you say, with the vocals, and once again, sort of reminded me of the Second Law, where it's sort of trying to give you a break and sort of let you know how things are going to be. The vocals are very good. Nita Kravis did a very good job performing here. And again, it does bring back those Carnegie Science Center vibes where you're just, expecting, to learn about, how the human body works and, what things are going to be happening next. So, yeah, I can't really add too much more than you already added. Not my top three, but I can completely understand why it's yours.
One other thing I'm going to notate here, and this might be one of the only times we talk about lyrics within this album here. I love the repetition of certain phrases. You get that a lot in this album, but with this having a more of a spoken word, more of a lyrically wordy focus, whenever phrases are repeated, it's within purpose. So you get obviously the title of the track is referenced with "You are entering the dome's protection once again. You are entering the dome's protection once again." And you really just think about hey, you got the instrumentation's all peaceful and everything like that, and you can really feel like you're entering the dome's protection once again. And yeah, you also get moments where phrases like "it is in the place that we tame the future," and you can just really picture this is just basically coming from the future. So and it's very sci-fi oriented. So that yeah, I just moments like that really put the track over the top for me, and I can't overstate the feeling that I got from this track.
And that's what it is a lot of times. It's just, a track might just hit and you're just like, oh wow, holy crap, I was not expecting this, but I feel amazing about that. So yeah, are you ready to move on to Reason Why?
Yep. And let's see. I think it is your turn to kick off Reason Why, my dude.
I will gladly do that. And this is track number 5, featuring Kim Petras and BC Kingdom. And we get the first real sort of head towards more mainstream pop on this track. And it features a very solid beat from Sophie and some sampled vocals, which I think play really nice with the track. There's really not a whole lot on the lyrical front because it's very much a simplistic lyrical track. But I'm just going to say it. My thought about this track was very similar to yours about the dome's protection. Have you ever seen the meme of Gordon Ramsay saying, "Finally, some good food"?
No, I haven't.
Oh, okay. Well, basically, it's just a picture of Gordon Ramsay looking down, and the caption is, "Finally, some good effing food." Which, to me, is my thoughts about this track. Finally, some good music. And I just, again, something works here. I think there's a familial nature with it. Again, the way that Sophie samples the vocals here is phenomenal. It feels like, and I'm not usually a fan of sort of high-pitched vocals, but it very much feels like something you'd hear on slow jams by Kanye, or maybe even Good Feeling by Flo Rida. Whatever the case is, it just works so well here. And we move from your favorite track on the album to my favorite track in Reason Why.
So the vibes we are keep riding right now. I mean, our vibes are high because this is my third favorite track on the album, man. So yeah, and for me, I'm gonna just echo a lot of the thoughts you had. So yeah, this is just such a smooth EDM song that I just really got into the groove of. And that's when you can tell like music like this hits, if you can sink yourself into the groove and if you can get lost into it by the production, by the vocal performances, and then vocal performances don't even really need to add too much to the table. It's just mainly, hey, how much does this add to the table? How much does this add to the texture that you're just diving into? And it just lands so freaking well here. Like the song mainly features the vocals lines from Kim Petras, like we both alluded to, that just eventually fade into the background just due to how smooth and great the instrumentation is. And for me, the inclusion of BC Kingdom works well, especially with moments where just everything just comes together. Like they're just dueling out together, and like the vibes are at an all-time high. So yeah, we go. This is your favorite track, and the previous track was my favorite track, and we go from that favorite track to my third favorite track. So yeah, man, I'm loving the vibes we are experiencing now, especially considering like how the first couple tracks went for us.
I know this is such weird sequencing that it almost seems inappropriate to call it sequencing, because we go from atmospheric start, bad track, on to atmospheric track that you love, to more standard dance pop that I love. So yeah, we're kind of all over the place right at the start. So let's keep this roller coaster going with "Living My Truth."
So living my truth. So yeah, this is another EDM song that basically rides the vocals provided from BC Kingdom, and I just I like the idea of the chorus with the repetition of the lines, doing it my way. But dude, this is where we start to see the hyperpop influence and the genre creep in with "Live in My Truth." Like it takes away from the vibes for me, and maybe I'm just too old, too basic Sam here, but it doesn't work for me. Smooth production from Sophie, however, and I do like the verses where it basically hits you with the questions, essentially asking, hey, when's the last time you lived your life? And for this to be an EDM song, and I can imagine this being played in the club, but it wouldn't be a club that I would ever go to. Not that I've ever been to a club. I digress. It's not one of my least favorite tracks on the album, but it could easily popped in there due to just the hyper pop vocals, man. You know me. Whenever I hear just something that sticks out in a track that's like a sore thumb, it just sinks it for me.
I get that, and I kind of am right there with you. This is not my least favorite track or any of my least favorite tracks either, but it could have gotten there. My first note on this track was, this sounds like dance pop to people who hate dance pop, because while the beat is very good, like you said, with Sophie providing a solid backbone to this track, the lyrics about, doing things and living in my truth and keeping it going, it just kind of sounds very banal to me. And yet somehow my other note about this track is that I could kind of see where Charlie XCX got a lot of her sort of worldview that created Brat, honestly. Because I feel a lot of the same vibes from that I do on this track, where it's sort of kind of almost like a 360 or a 365, where it's just like, yeah, we're just doing what we want to do and, staying in our lanes and making the lanes our world, and that's that. So, yeah, I did not really appreciate the start of this track on second listen, where, like you said, those sort of high-pitched vocals come in. I thought that was a bit of a turn-off, but not so much that I'm going to knock it any further. This track's okay.
Yeah, and I think that's where you and I strike a good balance within exploring different genres that we're not familiar with, because we can easily just take a listen to tracks like this, and even tracks like Plunging Asymptote, and be like, hey, this is something that we don't listen to. This isn't for me. This whole album sucks. Just instantly taking it based off that rating, that mindset. But we're taking good stuff from it, and we're just saying we're seeing the merits of it, and especially considering that We've also kind of explored this genre a little bit with Brat by Charlie XCX, and we both came away from that album walking with good vibes with it was what it was bringing to the table. So this is almost like the next step up within that hyperpop genre, and I just wanted to throw that disclaimer out there because for the listeners out there who are listening to this and are like, why, like, I like this album, these guys just don't get it. No, like, we understand what it's bringing to the table, and this is just our honest opinion. So yeah, that's why you came to listen to us.
Right. So moving on to the next track, which is Why Lies. And we kind of go back to the same vibes that we were having on Reason Why, which is a bit more of a poppier type of dance track. And I really like the hook on this one a lot. It feels very familiar, almost like a sort of Madonna B-side in a sense, that you could hear like sort of in a not necessarily like in the club, but I know there used to be radio stations, particularly like I think there used to be one in Pittsburgh called Power 105 that was sort of like hot rhythm, and they would play like a lot of like dance songs. Like I could hear this being sort of like mixed in with that. And there's really not much else to the song other than that. It's mostly those kinds of vibes. Again, it feels like we're landing in the same sort of territory of party lyrics that the previous track had, which again aren't necessarily bad, but still kind of banal and very vapid. But again, for club music, sometimes all you need are vibes. And I think the ones on this track are very good. It is my third favorite track on the album.
So I'm a little bit lower on this track than you are. It's not one of my least favorite tracks, but yeah, like I'm gonna start out by just starting about the good, and then I'll give my criticisms out there. The production is so smooth. I do like that, and the chorus does do an excellent job of sucking the listener into its groove. But yeah, for me, I like you said, I viewed this song as a companion song to Live in My Truth. It's almost just like, hey, if Live in My Truth was the brother song, this is the sister song. Nothing to do with like stereotyping genders. That was just the, terminology that came to my brain there. However, the vocals that basically we ride here from Liz. They grind on my ears, especially when she gets up into her upper register. Like, it just doesn't land smoothly to me. And to, again, I haven't really commented too much about lyrics here because there's not really much to talk about within this album. But the one lyric that caught my ear here was the whole save your drama for your mama line. Come on, man. Be better. like that is Will Smith discovering how to rap bad. No shade against Will Smith, but like that's just bad with a capital B, man. So again, this could have fell into my bottom three, but when we get to like the other two tracks that are in my bottom three, I think I can adequately properly explain why I don't care for them.
I can respect your opinion on that. I think, again, I referenced the Fantana review where he very much mentioned that as well. I can't say I disagree, but again, I didn't really hear it because I was so sucked in by the vibes of the track that I was just kind of like, meh. So I can understand, like, there's some points where you're just like, oh no, I can't excuse that, but it's kind of, I again, this is not, this isn't my top three, but at the same time, it's funny because last week we were talking about it with She Is His Only Need from Winona, and I made the remark of, it's a fine song if you're not paying attention, and in this case, I wasn't paying attention.
Well, I mean, that's the intended purpose of music like this. Like, it's meant to suck you in, so you got sucked in, and I mentioned how that vocal grinded on my ears, and that prevented me from getting sucked in, and then I got hit with that line. So like, that's the effect of that track there. Anyways, Matt, are you ready to talk about Actually, I'm going to talk about the next track here. Do You Want to Be Alive? And yeah, this ends off side A of the record. I'm going to make another vinyl reference here. I could see this being released on vinyl, but talking about this track here. So this is like, compared to like what we've wrote so far, with like the last couple tracks being like, Reason Why, Living My Truth, Why Lies, like this is pretty low key compared to the other tracks. Like the bouncy instrumentation is nice, and it was kind of like the hush vocals here. Like if you look into the lyrics, like they're kind of like, like I'm not gonna read them like, word for word, because like, they're pretty explicit, but like they're fairly sexual in nature. I'm just gonna leave it at that. But yeah, just the vocal, like that was a little bit off-putting, and it's just the song ends where, in a weird fashion, the groove that started at the end basically carries into the next track. Like it's almost just like, we start to get into more of the dance music element within this album, where like, tracks just kind of blend into each other. And like, I'll be honest with you, like if due to like the way I was listening to this record here, there was moments where I was just like, wait, this track is going on for way too long. Oh, we're actually halfway into the next track here, because just like the song structures are not what I'm used to. And I know, like, with this kind of music, I'm going to exclude that phrasing for the rest of the review here. Like, it's meant to just be vibes. But yeah, recapping, it's not a bad song, but there's just like not enough to like, take it over the edge for me with Do You Want to Be Alive?
It's very interesting that you brought up the lyrics once again, because for the second song in a row, I was not paying attention to them. And the reason was I did not get sucked into the track or the vibes of the track. In fact, I was, for lack of a better term, sucked away from them, because the biggest problem I have with this track, and it's not in my bottom three, but it easily could have gotten there, or bottom anything, the echo on the vocals. I'm sorry, like that was just too much. Like the echoing vocals, it was just sort of like, so we're here, and we're talking about, it just turned me off like immediately. And once again, it's a shame, because the rest of the track, particularly Sophie's backbeat to this, is actually pretty good. The little drip noises that you hear throughout the course of the track, I think, once again, showcase the creativity in which she was going for here. Otherwise, it's a solid minimalist type beat, and it's the first of a few songs in a row that we're going to talk about that fall in that category. But yeah, man, those vocals. And you know what? Since it's not even going in the database, I'm just gonna say this is my third least favorite track. I'm changing my MO here. This is my third least favorite track on the album.
Oh man, pivoting on the fly. I'm very proud of you, man. So yeah, I'll have to re-listen to the track here again, just to catch what you were talking about with the vocals, because like that kind of flew on by me. But I digress. It's kind of like, a weird way to end off the first half of the album. But again, like I think we discussed, like the sequencing here is basically like Leroy Jenkins to a team. But before we move on to Elegance, Matt, I got a question for you.
What's that, Ryan?
So if the listener is like, enjoying what we're bringing to the table, even though, like, I feel like for the most part we're kind of up and down with this review so far, it might be like our most like, and we're good, and we're bad, and we're good, and we're bad. But like, if they're really appreciating our discussion right now, and they really want to go full Leroy Jenkins in supporting us, what is the best way that they can support us to help us create more content like this?
Well, first of all, I appreciate the multiple references to Leroy Jenkins throughout this episode. Always appreciated. Secondly, the way they can support us is by continuing to listen to us and by, just getting the word out there. Whether you find us on YouTube or Spotify or Apple Music or your podcasting platform of choice, you can go ahead and share that link on your social medias. We do have handles on Facebook under Hey Listen to This, and Ryan, I'll throw this to you. We have made some changes to our social media output over the course of this last week.
So yeah, we did. We have Facebook, we have Instagram, and after some self-reflection, I'm not gonna try to make any statement here, just due to the quality of the platform basically being pretty poor at the moment. I decided with Matt's, we collaborated on this decision. We pulled ourselves off of X. I mean, the account is still there, it's still active, but we're not going to be posting on there anymore. So we moved over to Blue Sky, and the handle is if you check out the episode description, you'll see the link to our Blue Sky account there. But it's essentially all of our social medias, TT Hey Listen. So if you're listening to us, and if you're on Blue Sky, or if you've been thinking about making the jump, make the jump. It's fun to jump. I like jumping. You should too.
I was not expecting that quote this episode either. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Follow us on Blue Sky, follow us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, Threads as well. And again, get the word out there if you like what you're listening to. Also, if you have any suggestions for ways we can improve or things you'd like to hear, perhaps an album recommendation of your own, you can reach out to us by going to our email at ttheylisten@gmail.com. And we'll hear you loud and clear the best we can.
So, the next track here, man, is Elegance. And Matt, do you want to kick off side B of this album here?
Yes, and before I get into that, it's funny that you're mentioning this being side B of the record, because I listened to this through the hour-long stream that was presented on Sophie's channel on YouTube, and the whole thing is just one continuous thing. So in my mind, I'm thinking, where in the hell could they possibly cut off one song to create a side A and a side B? I don't know where. But that's aside the point. Elegance featuring Popstar. Once again, another minimalist track that I think Sophie's production is the key asset to. Very minimalistic and pretty much just chugs along at a very basic pace until the very end, where the Exhilarate became a very nice touch to sort of, hype things up a little bit. Aside from that, though, the only other note I have in here is Elegance. Tom Ford? But yeah, aside from that, I really don't have a whole lot to say about this track. It's fine.
Yeah, I have a lot of the same thoughts. It knows what it's doing and it does it well. And the only thing that kind of took it away from being a good track, in my opinion, the track starts out with a little rough with grinding elements in the production. But it does turn out to after you get out of that moment, the rest of the track is fine. It's your typical EDM track. You get the vocals basically saying the title of the track, and like you mentioned, the accelerando at the end works well. I like the instrumental break. I thought that was a nice touch, breaking up otherwise what would have been the straightest of all forwards of all tracks here. So yeah, if you're ready, I'm just gonna kick off Berlin Nightmare.
I'm good.
All right, cool. So yeah, this track here has a nice groovy, decent beat to it. And the vocals that break up the groove are said in German, and I'm not even going to try to like, say the German pronunciation there, because like, I know what I am. I'm good at discussing music, but I'm not good at speaking German. I'm human too, after all. So the lyrics are basically saying, "We come from Germany, honey." And I felt that was a nice track within the context of an EDM song, and the production is just so solid. I appreciate, like, how by this point in the record I was catching on to the fact that, like, oh hey, like some tracks are just gonna bleed into like another track. So like you get that with Berlin Nightmare bleeding over into Gallop.
Yeah, maybe a little higher on this track than you are. It's not my top three, and I'll explain why in a second. But I did appreciate, again, not just the German talking that takes place throughout the song, but also the German influence, because I can very much hear how a lot of this track sort of stems back to a lot of the, for lack of a better term, like German-based disco or German club music that goes all the way back to when Kraftwerk was sort of experimenting with that in the late 1970s. And I thought this track could have crept into my top three, but then it sort of switches into the less Berlin, more Nightmare part of the track about halfway through. And I didn't really dig that quite as much. Like, it wasn't terrible, but it was just kind of a little bit of a turnoff before it goes back into the main beat towards the end of the song. So I thought this was a rather intelligent track. I think Sophie's production is very much a proper homage to the Berlin disco sound. And if it weren't for that little switch in the middle, I might have pushed this a little higher, but it's a solid track.
Yeah, and like a lot of the tracks are, they're pretty solid. Like, you're gonna have those moments that stick out and like you can really like sink your teeth into. But you ready to talk about the next track here, Gallop?
Yes, the next track is Gallop, and much like Berlin Nightmare, it features Evita Manji. Forgot to mention that before. And this track, man, like, it just grabs you by the throat and pulls you into another dimension. Like, it just goes from 0 to 100 right away and doesn't stop for the next, like, 2 minutes. And honestly, it's my second favorite track on the entire album, because if we're talking about club music, if we're talking about good, strong club music, like, I can very much envision this blasting over 1,000 speakers and just, like, losing my ever-loving mind to this song. And it's just really good club music. Like, I can imagine, like, fist pumping and, waving glow sticks and just, vibing to the maximum capacity. And granted, all this track is vibes, but the vibes are, like, immaculate. So, yeah, I dig this song a lot.
And I'm right there with you, man. Like, I just love the intensity that is brought on with like this track here. The feels are 100% there. That line that the synths are doing, like, it is absolutely great. Like, it really just, propels you forward in such a momentous fashion. And like along with that, you get the grounding track that contrasts very well, and it only adds to just what, for lack of a better term, like the fire that Gallop is bringing to the table. And just also, just I love how this track kind of gets like a little hazy element added to it. Like, it only adds like a nice little texture to it. Didn't land in my top three, but no, I absolutely respect what this track had to bring to the table.
Yeah, no, again, it's just great vibes, great dance music, and I can't really say much more than that.
So the next track here is One More Time. Not to be confused with Daft Punk's One More Time. That is another track for another day. But this is another collaboration with Popstar here. And yeah, the lyrics are, we get it back into like the groove and the mindset of Elegance with like, just the lyrics basically being the title of the track. However, like, I am much higher on this track here compared to Elegance. Like, the way that the track basically starts out. You get that little like warby effect, like warbly that I described in the full horror, and then after that, the synths just start to take off. They kick everything off, and the pivot into the fuller instrumentation really adds just a really nice contrast. And for me, this was like one of the very first occurrences of like pure songwriting within the album. And I could be wrong. You could correct me on that if you feel like you have a valid comparison there. But yeah, I really did appreciate that pivot over to like just what like that moment just landed so well in my ears, and the groove, that new groove that occurs after that pivot, it works so well, especially with that clean piano line and how it's under like just the drum machine that is underneath that piano line, just adding like a nice foundation. Like yeah, I can't say enough good things about this track here. And we've arrived at my second favorite track on the album. One More Time is an absolute banger for me.
I can respect that. I'm not nearly as high on this song as you are, but I think it's a solid track too. I do like the fact that it's sort of very subtly, sort of, goes adrift for the first half. It almost feels like a break from the pulse of Gallop. Like it's not a complete stop, but it's just sort of a nice, very sort of almost atmospheric type of beat to sort of, keep things going without pushing any further, because, again, Gallop was just crazy. And then the second half I thought was all right, too. Again, I thought the vocals were pretty good. I thought the beat was good. Again, Sophie does a great job on that. I really don't have many other notes to say about this song because it didn't, again, pop out to me like it did for you, but I thought it was pretty good.
All right, man. So are you ready to talk about the next track here, Exhilarate?
Yes, Exhilarate featuring B.B. Borelli. And yeah, this track's pretty good too. Like, I thought the vocals from BB on this track and the harmonies are very nice. And for the first time, really, throughout the entire record, maybe with the exception of your favorite track, is that the lyrics are pretty solid. It's a welcome change from the sort of vapid party stuff we were dealing with on the likes of Elegance, or even some of my favorite tracks like Why Lies. Sophie's beat's very good. The only thing that really kept this track away from my top three was the ending, where the instrumental sort of has a purpose of tearing everything down, but at the same time, it sort of had that grinding effect that you've been talking about throughout this episode, where I was just kind of like, I don't know if this is going right into my ears in the proper way. So, yeah, now this track's solid. It could have been in my top three, but just got out of there.
I totally appreciate that, man. So, yeah, the track Exhilarate here. So, yeah, for me, I talk about I talked about at the beginning of this review here, like we get moments like where you get like pop music, you get EDM music, and you get like drone music. Yeah, we move away from like the straight EDM kind of feel of One More Time to Exhilarate, which is like more of like you get like that pop music landscape with like an EDM kind of twist, and I did appreciate that here. The production on here is absolutely amazing though. Like everything just sounds so big with the drums and the synths, and it's just working so well. And one criticism that I do have, even though the vocal performances are pretty solid, is just the chorus tends to be a little bit too wordy, and not in the sense of Gang of Youths or a couple of the tracks that we've talked about in this show here. but in the sense of like, it just seems like the singer is having a hard time keeping up with the words that are coming out of her mouth. As weird as that sounds, it might be just like how fast the beat was going, or how, like, they were trying to, like, maybe give the listener the impression of, like, exhilarating and just hitting that, that gas on the pedal, like, that is referenced in that chorus there. You get lyrics of like, got my foot on the gas, got my foot on the gas. I've been going way too fast for myself. And like, that might be what they were trying to go for. I just feel like it didn't land too well in my ears. But other than that, like, again, production is fantastic. I absolutely did dig it. We've already cracked my top three, but I did appreciate this track nonetheless.
Yeah, it's a nice track. I think as far as the pop songs are concerned, like this is one of the better ones throughout the entirety of the album. So if you're ready, I'm willing to pivot over to Always and Forever.
So yeah, the vibes get brought back down with this track here, because we had a pretty good like run with One More Time and Exhilarate, but yeah, we kind of get like that, yeah, bland EDM vibe. I was gonna try to defer away from that, but to be honest with you, I kind of don't like this song, and it is a pain to listen to, and it's just for the simple fact, like, again, production is good. Like, I have no faults against what Sophie and what her brother brought to the table here. I love, again, the spacey like wubs that you hear in the song, but the vocals are what got me. I can't stand the way that they were produced. Like, it's basically like you take maybe what Ellie Goulding brings to the table, but basically make it like very whispery and very like, oh hey, I'm just a white girl like singing over an EDM song. Like, dude, come on. And you do that for the whole song? Like, get out of here with this garbage, man. I hate to call it that, but like, dude, it was just pathetically weak for me. And yeah, I don't know if you could tell, but yeah, we've arrived at my third least favorite track on the album here with Always and Forever. Again, I did appreciate the production. I love what Benny and Sophie brought to the table, but like those vocals, like, and again, maybe I should cut. I think the only reason why this track doesn't pop in to my second least favorite track on the album is the fact that I'm kind of giving a little bit of slack here due to the fact that, like, again, what we're listening to is supposed to be an intentionally finished product due to what Benny did to it, but maybe like there were circumstances out of his control, like the vocals cannot be like replicated, or like, fixed up. But I mean, I digress. Third least favorite track on the album.
I understand where you're coming from with that. I'm a tiny bit higher on this track than you, because I think the production is actually really good on this track. I think Sophie's production, particularly with the late night tones, kind of reminded me a little bit of Don't Smile from Sabrina Carpenter, very much in that same wheelhouse. The production sounds fantastic on this track, but as far as the vocals are concerned, I don't think they were that badly produced, but it is such a mismatch. I will agree with you there, because Hannah Diamond's vocals are very pretty. I have it written down perhaps too pretty. They do seem very wistful and lightweight. And I think what helps that vibe go in the wrong direction are the lyrics too, because I'm sorry, like, when she's singing, paint a cloud up in the sky, tell me if you see it too, or whatever the hell the lyrics are. I'm just thinking, this is not suitable, number one, for an EDM track, but it's also just not suitable for an adult song, period. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Animal House, but there's a scene in that movie where there's a guy with an acoustic guitar on the steps singing this very like placid like ballad, like very placid folk song about, you know, I once had a tree that had no branch. All before John Belushi takes his guitar and smashes it against the wall. For some reason, this song reminded me of that, because this is just a vapid. This is a vapid song in the other direction. Like, we're not talking about like, club music, or doing Molly, or yelling to the other person, hey, could you keep it down? I'm trying to do drugs over here. This is just too whimsical. Like, this is just like a kid song set to an EDM beat, and it's such a mismatch. But again, like I said before, if you're not paying attention, it sounds really good because the production is there. Sophie's production is the star of the show. So I completely understand why you have this in your bottom three. But yeah, I thought it was all right.
That's fair enough. And maybe with, well, I'm not going to try to have the mindset of like, when I'm approaching music like this, I need to turn off my brain, because like, there's some moments where like, there's some music where I will just automatically do that, and that's how my brain works. But yeah, I'm not going to turn it off and give it an excuse, because like, I don't know, like I feel like there's some tracks in this album here that I've really dug, and like, they were basically pure vibes, like Elegance, one more time. Elegance. But yeah. Anyways, without any further ado, I'll get to it whenever it's my turn to talk about the next track here, but I'm gonna let you kick off My Forever.
My Forever, the penultimate track on this project, featuring the vocal talents of Cecile Believe. And pretty much I have the same thoughts about this song that I do the other song, except I'm a little higher on this track, even more so. Not in my top three, but the lyrics go from utterly ridiculous to just simply banal. Like, they don't really talk about anything other than, being in love with someone, in love forever, which, most love songs are just kind of like, in that category. But once again, the vocals, I think, are produced a lot better here. They're produced very clearly and cleanly. And once again, Sophie nails the Dark Knight dance vibes to a T. Like, this goes in that same category, such as Always and Forever. I don't really have a whole lot else to say about the song other than it's another solid album track that on a better day I probably could push into my top three.
I'm right there with you, man. Like, this is very much like a lot of the tracks on the album here. Like, it's very much an album track. However, like there's a lot of good to be had here, but not in terms of like quantity, but more quality. And for me, the vocals work so well here, and like maybe that the sequencing here was done on purpose. Wherever you get like Always and Forever, where the vocals are basically like what I thought of them, and then you get here where the vocals just work so well. They're just so smooth, especially whenever they are singing like lines like, I want to go back to forever, you'll always be my forever. Like, just like the repetition of that just lands so well, my dude. And just, again, the groove works so great here, and I just did dig the smooth production. We've already ran out of, top tracks for me, but judging by the way that I talked about My Forever here, you probably know that this is my second least favorite track on the album, right?
Right. This is not your second least favorite track on the album. And so I'm curious as to find out why Love Me Off Earth is.
So, yeah. I'll start out with the positives. So the shift that occurs in the beginning of the track works really well, and just that little synth line that occurs within the track, that while it's building up, it's very interesting to me. Like, it's a very thin and tinny kind of synth, but like I just was instantly kind of attracted to it. Um, just the vocals work well here, and that last pivot occurs like at that moment, like when I'm talking about the last pivot, like for me, it occurs just a bit too hard for my liking because it almost seems like it's an incomplete thought wherever they were going in one direction, and then they suddenly make a very sharp left turn out of nowhere, and it was just a little bit too much of a pivot for me, and then it's mainly within the last part of like the last half of the track here that really sinks it down to being my second least favorite, because then you get the hyper pop vocals here that occur and they are just rough, man, like rough, all caps all day, and then the track just suddenly stops. Like it's literally an incomplete track, and maybe like that was a wink wink nudge nudge to like how this album was like produced, and maybe Benny did it on purpose, being like, hey, like this song is incomplete because like Sophie was like basically her life was cut a little bit too short. That might be me reading a little bit too much into it, but yeah, just for this, I really would want to know if this was intentionally produced like this, because otherwise, if this is what you're saying is a complete thought and a complete track for me, it was a rough experience for me, man.
It's not my top, or excuse me, obviously it's not my top or bottom three, this track, but I'm pretty much right there with you the whole way through. The opening is very good. It teeters on the repetitiveness, but it's very good. And talking about reading too much into it, those little sort of dive bomb sound effects that Sophie has there, that doo, it kind of, with the title of the track being Love Me Off Earth, I was sort of thinking it was like the Wile E. Coyote sound effect, and I'm thinking that's actually a really clever touch to have, like, him falling off the earth as a part of this track. And also the little keyboard thing that goes on, that adds a really nice touch, almost like a closing credits vibe, like you just reached the end of a video game. And if they had just stuck with that, this track would have been a great closer. But that ending ruins it so hard. Like, again, it's not just the fact that it's the hyperpop, but it's just the chipmunk vocals and the double speed. Like, this is something you hear more like on the end of Frank Zappa's Freak Out, except it's not nearly as smart as that. Yeah, no, that was a really downer ending to this whole album, and I wish they had not left it in, because, like you said, it raises the question: is this really what you intended? Because it's not good.
Yeah, and for me, there could have been a natural way for this to be a like an homage to Sophie's passing. However, it's a poor homage. Like you're sniffing your own farts at this own rate, for lack of a better comparison. Like, you're up your own butt. But since we finished Love Me Off Earth and we're not sniffing our own butts, you know what that means, right?
That means we did it.
We did it, man. I felt like this review, it was a gauntlet, man. Like, we tackled a lot of tracks and we had a lot of mixed reactions about it, man.
I agree. We had a lot of mixed reactions. We definitely had differing opinions on some of them, and somehow we also had very similar opinions about a lot of them, just because, again, we came into this not necessarily high on any type of hyper pop or EDM or dance pop, because that's not our wheelhouse by any means. But there were elements to this we liked, elements to this we don't like, and yeah, we did it. So I am going to let you go first with your full album review.
So there's a lot of thoughts and feelings I have about this album here. For sure, without any doubt, this is not my usual music of choice, and it's not music meant for me. However, I like to approach different music genres with the earnestness of trying to mine for gold with it. We've talked about Taylor Swift's Tortured Poets Department. We've talked about Billie Eilish. We've talked about Sabrina Carpenter. A lot of the pop stuff, which is not really for me. And even when we did Kanye West's Jesus, I remember not particularly liking that album upon first listen. So again, I went into that album trying to dig for gold and find good and what this brings to the table within it, what it's trying to present. So there are for sure some solid songs and great songs on here. I did love tracks like One More Time, and also the Dome's Protection, and just how some tracks absolutely really embrace truly great moments in Gallop, and just even basic songs Elegance, and My Forever. Well, My Forever wasn't really all that basic, but those are great songs. Those really did cover a gamut of wide genres, and I applaud Sophie for approaching a lot of these songs like that, and for many along coming in and putting the cap on that. But again, there's a lot of songs. There are some songs on here where it just seems like it's an incomplete mess. Love Me Off Earth, and even how the vocals were produced in Always and Forever. It's just a lot of the moments where the hyper pop vocals just really take center stage. Not for me whatsoever. And again, that just might be a genre preference. But for my mindset, from what I was able to mine away from it, and just who I am as a person and as a music lover, yeah, I'm going to rate this album a solid 6.5 out of 10.
So my thought going into this was, what am I going to experience? Because this is a posthumous album that was released this year, and it was released not necessarily by the artist, but by the artist's brother and several collaborators. And I've seen some people refer to this album as a cash grab. I don't buy into that, because I don't necessarily think that I feel like if this was a cash grab, it'd be a little bit more messy and perhaps even soulless than it is. But the quote that I'm reminded of listening to this album as a whole is the quote of, "You know what it means when you assume, right? It makes an ass out of you and me." And it feels like the bad decisions on this album are at the very worst assumptions that this is what Sophie would have wanted. Because her work and her beats throughout the entire project are at the very worst okay, and at the best good, really good. But some of the choices with the vocals, particularly on Always and Forever, on Raw, on Plunging Asymptote, even the ending to this album, which I think was just a kind of a slap in the face to the listener, there were just so many moments that brought this album down. And my general takeaway from it is, I don't know how this could be done better, but at the same time, I can hear how it could be done better. There are elements that need to be taken away. So with that in mind, I'm going to give this a 5.5 out of 10.
Oh, man. So that averages out to a solid 6 out of 10 because
math.
We did it, man. We did it. Oh, man. This might be our lowest review in a while, to be honest with you. That goes up there with Pearl Jam. But, yeah. That being said, when it came to the next album recommendation, I could either went with a Charlie XCX album, or I could have went another direction. I'm going the other direction, leaving the door open for you a little bit. I don't know if you're going to be picking the album that I'm thinking of, but if you checked out the self-titled album by SOPHIE here, and you wanted to, like, check out, like, another worker for hers, check out the other album that was released in 2017, Oil of Every Pearl's on Insides. There are some moments where it really does ride the hyperpop train within that album. However, like, a lot of the production and everything on it is super solid in my opinion. I haven't done a full dissection on it as compared to like what we've done here with this album. But yeah, solid album from 2017. You can actually experience like a fully fleshed out solo project from SOPHIE. So I heavily encourage every listener, and even you, Matt, to check out that album as well.
I am definitely curious to check out that album because I feel like you said, that was more fully fleshed out and more fully realized. So I do want to check that out at some point. Now, I am going to recommend two albums here, and one of them does not exist. So I'll explain. It will make sense in a second here. My official recommendation, I thought about going with Brat, but I'm going to pivot a little bit to another artist I mentioned earlier in this review, which is Kraftwerk, and their peak album from 1977, I want to say. I might have the year wrong, but it was definitely late 70s, and that is their album Trans-Europe Express. And much like the best moments on SOPHIE, very minimalist. It keeps the rhythm flowing, very basic beats. If you're into German disco or even like early old school hip hop samples, that's an album you would definitely have to check out. So I'm going to recommend Trans-Europe Express by Kraftwerk. Now, the album that does not exist that I'm going to recommend is thus. As we've mentioned at the top of the show and various times throughout, this album sort of, and this artist, SOPHIE had a strong relationship with Charlie XCX, who shouted out SOPHIE on Brat. I want Charlie XCX to come up to Benny and say, listen, give me the keys. I want to make this album right. I want to get the right features. I want to get the right personnel. I want to do something based in my worldview that I think SOPHIE would appreciate. So, if by any chance Charlie XCX or any of her super fans might be listening, get the word out there that I would love to hear an album with these beats sort of reimagined through the prism of Charlie XCX and whoever she can get on, whether it be Lorde, whether it be Billie Eilish. And I'm not saying, again, and I don't want this to be a cash grab. I don't want this to be a soulless cash grab. That's not what I'm asking for here. But I'm thinking that with a more professional mindset behind this, with a more fleshed out idea of professionalism, I think a better album could be made with Charlie XCX at the helm. And if anyone wants to say I'm out of line for thinking that, I understand, because this is sort of a very touchy territory I'm going in. But deep down, I was thinking, if Charlie XCX made this album with the parts that SOPHIE left behind, I think it would be better than this product.
I love that idea, man. And I don't think Charlie would touch that idea, but I did appreciate the you bringing that to the table there. It would be a fun idea though. Yeah. So speaking about fun ideas, man, Matthew.
Yes, Ryan.
It is your turn. So we've officially covered SOPHIE by SOPHIE. Where are we going next?
Well, while we're on the controversial train, my next selections are going to be two projects. And you're going to choose one of them. But two projects in which singer-songwriters from the late 60s decide that they want to incorporate world music. And a lot of that stems from the praise music and musical stylings that come from Africa. So, That's the base, and I'm going to let you choose between the 2 years that these albums were released. Your options are 1970 or 1986.
Let's do 1986.
Okay. I think you made the right choice, and I think you're picking the better album here. And this is an album that, ironically enough, has won Grammy for Album of the Year. It is one of the more successful albums in this person's catalog. It's also one of the more controversial albums ever made. And I am talking about the 1986 release by Paul Simon called Graceland.
Oh, I've never listened to anything by Paul Simon, like within his solo work before. So I'm excited to check out Graceland and learn about, like, the controversy behind it. So yeah, I'm all game, man.
Yeah, no, there's a little bit of controversy back there, so we're probably going to be going pretty deep into next episode. But I am very excited to have you listen to Graceland and for us to talk about it next time around.
Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you have not listened to Graceland by Paul Simon yet, do yourself a favor. Check out that album between now and next week's review. That way you're familiar with what me and Matt are going to be talking about here. And, you can have opinions about the opinions that we're going to bring to the table. But, yeah, that basically wraps up this episode of Hey, Listen to This. I know that me and Matt here had one hell of a time talking about, like, Sophie by Sophie. And yeah, I don't think we walked away from, like, glowing reviews. And yeah, there might be, like, some people out there who might be hating on us right now. So what me and Matt are going to be doing right now, we are going to be entering the Dome's protection once again.
With Elegance, no less.
Elegance.